Is there anyone who you can call as your mentor?
My mom. She's no more, but she continues to inspire me because it's incredible how much you remember when somebody leaves your life. Talking to you about this, I'm realizing how eventful these 15 years have been because you've had COVID.
How do you see AI in filmmaking?
Do you realize that 50 years ago, everybody didn't fly by an airplane? They took a train to reach where they had to, and took longer. And then if you go 50 years before that, they took a car. And if you go 50 years before that, they took a horse.
What is that one thing that they need to make sure they have before coming here?
We've actually got a very streamlined process. There's a QR code that you can scan, which appears on our website, and then you can automatically go into where you can make that submission. Nikhil and I were always competing with each other as siblings, and we are fiercely protective of each other. On the first Saturday of every month when she'd get her paycheck, she would take me to work and I'd sit in the reception waiting for her to finish and get half day. And then we would walk from one point of Colaba Causeway to the other point, looking at shops, and say to ourselves, one day we'll have money to buy what all the shops have. You know, you keep thinking about death and the impact it'll have till it does. And strangely, it makes you stronger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives by DGMC, an exclusive podcast series where wisdom meets aspiration. I am Sanman Udgikar, the podcaster. Great stories don't just entertain us, they shape the way we see the world. Today, we are joined by one of the leading female producers in the Indian film industry, the co founder of Emmay Entertainment, a production house known for its content driven cinema that has produced several widely celebrated films such as Airlift and Freedom at Midnight. By backing research driven storytelling, she has played an important role in shaping contemporary Hindi cinema through thoughtful content driven films. Beyond production, she is also deeply passionate about mentoring young creators and nurturing future voices in cinema. A passionate storyteller, an entrepreneur, and a mentor, we are delighted to welcome Ms. Monisha Advani. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today, and welcome to Perspectives by DGMC.
Super to be here. Really grateful for you having me. Big supporter of your college and the work that you do.
Thank you so much. So, who, according to you, is Monisha Advani?
I sound immodest, but I think I'm an enabler. That's how I define myself. I've always seen myself as somebody who enables other people's dreams. The other thing I would say is that I've never chosen my career. My career has always chosen me. These are the two ways that I describe myself. A very loyal person. Yes, I describe myself as a very loyal person.
Well, that's a great way to start the podcast.
Thank you.
And Emmay Entertainment today is one of the top production houses in the country.
Thank
So, what
you.
do you think is the key factor that has contributed to the success of where it is today?
I think showing up every day. That's really important. It's 15 years, since we've been in business. And in these 15 years, I think the one thing that we do not relent or we do not let go of is our discipline and our determination to always show up every day. We work as a company that works Monday to Monday. I've talked about this earlier also. A lot of people try to understand what does that mean. When you become part of this industry, you realize that a lot of people associate your longevity in this business with the successes or perhaps not the successes, the failures that happen usually on a weekend, on a Friday. And so they say that your fortunes are built on a Friday. I can tell you at Emmay, we found a way, our secret sauce is that whether we make it on a Friday or we break it on a Friday, we make it back to work every Monday. And that, I think, is the super secret to our success.
You mentioned being in this business for 15 years.
Ji.
So, what are the major shifts that you as a producer have seen in the past decade, maybe in the film industry?
I think the advent of technology and embracing technology. I remember when we started the company, shooting on a digital camera was something that people were very averse to because shooting on a film had a romantic efficacy about it. And it was very difficult initially to convince filmmakers that they should consider shooting on something that we consider now almost second nature. Everybody is walking around with a device in their hands, which is enabling them to digitally capture their lives. So I think that was one very big shift, because it really helped filmmakers realize how they could unleash their creativity with not having a limitation on the coverage that they could get thanks to digital cinema. I think that digital equipment, I think what subsequently was a big watershed moment was how rapidly we were able to create and cultivate new media. So I think the digital revolution, again, talking about how it carries content into our devices, I think has been another big shift. And I mean, it's when I'm talking to you about this, I'm realizing how eventful these 15 years have been, because you've had COVID. COVID has changed consumer habits, and we are finding ourselves. Initially, we were scrambling, and now we're finding to learn from the consumer how and where we should find them, particularly with what we want to share as stories.
Speaking of industry trends, we all know what Dhurandhar 2, or rather 1 together, Dhurandhar
Right.
as a series of movies, has done. So, as a producer, how do you see Dhurandhar? Is it, telling us a lot about the way audience are expecting more and more from producers and filmmakers, or is it just good marketing? How do you see it?
I think you have to give huge credit. Firstly, I love Dhurandhar. I watched both the parts as soon as they released. Um, and I really believe that Aditya Dhar is a very gifted and a very clever filmmaker. And when I say the word clever, I don't mean it facetiously. I mean it in a way where he has found a way to build a rhythm in a story, which which really found its audience not looking to leave their chair. And I think that is something that you can only do if you have been picking up on the cues that they've been sending us, which is that they want good storytelling. He did it really well. They want to see really great framework. There is great technique in what he's put together. And I think more than anything, he made a very engaging and compelling story that related to real life, and where each of us found some aspect of that storytelling relating to ourselves. So, so I think there's a lesson in it for every type of filmmaker, and I hope they take it, because this is what we'll do to bring people back to the cinemas.
So, if we could go back, would you want Emmay to do something like Dhurandhar, or maybe Dhurandhar itself?
I don't have to go back. We actually, somewhere, I'd like to take him honestly some credit to having kicked off this genre with a film called D-Day. D-Day was made in 2013, and it's seminal, because if you look at the kind of love that it continues to get, and particularly on the coattails of Dhurandhar's release, where people started making comparisons to both the films, I think it's wonderful for us to see a film that we made in under 25 crores in 2013 continue to get the love that it did and does. So I think taking from there, taking that genre and that style of filmmaking, I think is something that Emmay Entertainment has really carved a niche for itself as well in. And I think hopefully we will carry the mantle forward and learn from even Dhurandhar and apply that to some of the stuff that we're putting out there in the coming future.
Okay. I heard one of your lectures,
Ji.
and at a summit, I think you spoke that how social media content, and rather any other content that we consume on the digital platforms, which is free of cost, is not going to compete with theaters or paid platforms, but it is going to make going to those platforms more valuable, because people are going to understand what is value content. But at the same time, I somewhere believe that social media, especially with Gen Z, has reduced the attention spans rapidly. So, do you see this as a challenge as a producer?
So I very good question. I think that any kind of content expands the market. Today we live in an environment where it's not about just disposable income that a consumer has. Consumer also has disposable time, and a sense of work-life balance has made them allocate almost on an average 6 to 7 hours towards content consumption. Now it could be reading your WhatsApp messages, it could be reading your emails, but it could also mean getting distracted by a click that takes you to a reel, a short story, an audiobook, a podcast. It is merely ensuring that a consumer is habit forming to keep consuming content. What that does is it is basically telling us that the pie is expanding. It means that as organized content creators, we have to work that much harder to find our foot into that. So I think we should be actually thanking social media for expanding that pie of attention and keeping ourselves on our toes to provide more. So if you want to grab attention, it's not about the duration of that, but it's the quality of what you're going to grab the attention with. And then people will find a way to allocate the time for it. Because guess what? They're learning to allocate more and more time to consuming content.
Very interesting.
Ji.
So, as a producer, what do you think should be the government's role in any film industry?
It's a brewing conversation now, not just in the context of India, but it's in the context of the world, where we're seeing nationalism, the rise of nationalism, pretty much across the globe, and people are becoming very possessive of how the content is projecting their identity, their culture. So on one hand, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we should take pride in the fact that our content creators are working on things that are going to project our culture in a new iteration, which is far more world consuming. Example, Ramayana, which we're all looking forward to. Where it comes to the government's role as far as things like censorship is concerned, I responded to this question to a friend of mine who is in the government, and I said, content is like water or air. You can try and trap it in a container, but it will always find a way to leak through. So metaphorically, we may try to put boundaries around ideas and stories, but we have to know and believe this, and that's the power of this wonderful art form. It will find a way to reach where it needs to. So it's literally something that we should appreciate for the fact that it's a very godly state to be able to tell a story or create a story, and it's that wonderful authenticity that will always find a way to cross hurdles if they were to be put before them. I'm also hopeful that we have a government that is very, very proactively trying to partner with creators, both, digital as well as people who are working with traditional art forms, to see how we can maintain them and bring them to life in new markets.
Very beautifully put together.
Thank you.
So do you have certain, I would say, obviously there is always a lot of scope to do much better, but as a producer, do you want some specific things to be done from the government's end to help filmmakers or maybe producers?
I think it's definitely one of the pillars that I feel gets missed and doesn't get addressed is the most critical one, which is funding. It's very disappointing when we have to see filmmakers of even the highest repute having to hypothecate their personal assets to raise money to tell stories that are going to be consumed by not just our audiences in India, but also when we are projecting it to audiences abroad. I can assure you that when a Steven Spielberg decides to make a film, he doesn't have to put his house on, to a bank to raise the money for it. Instead, he's going to go into the bank and he's going to say, I'm going to be making a film, and the bank will give him the money to make his film. He doesn't have to go to film festivals door to door trying to raise money for it, because again, he can walk into a financial institution and say, I'm a legitimate businessman who's going to be making an asset, which is going to be an IP that I'm creating, and it's going to have the potential to recover money in this manner. So can you please fund me for this, provide me a debt instrument to be able to do so? We can't do that in India because banks don't give the credence. We are happy to give our sector and industry status, but we are not providing it with the industry pillars that you would to anybody in any other sector, whether it's IT sector, whether it is renewable energy. Everybody who's considered to be a new age or a service provider, also even telecom, we provide funding for them. Banks are happy to write checks. We don't get that. And I think that needs to change. I think that's where the government can step in and give us the initiative to help us invest in the sector.
Okay. Coming a little to your work, as a producer, you are almost invisible to the audience. Like, they know it's Emmay Entertainment. But once the filmmaking process starts, you've approved the story and it's in making process, and till the release date and
Right.
beyond that, how much of the success or failure of a film do you think is in the producer's control? Do you have some strings to pull up if you think that maybe we are going in a wrong direction? Is there something that producers can do?
You know, we can be very clever about how efficiently a film gets made. We can be very clever about how the film gets packaged, how it gets marketed. But I have to correct you on one thing. We don't have the power. The power is in the hands of the audience. Because I don't think any filmmaker, whether they're a producer, whether they're a director, an actor, technician, and the combined village that makes a film or a series, I can assure you they all put their best to make sure they're doing something that succeeds. But what really is the variable we're dealing with is on that day when that comes out, who's going to watch it, who's going to discover it, how they feel when they discover it, how they consume it, where it touches and resonates with them as a tuning fork does in the case of sound. And I mean, in all those variabilities, you suddenly find that one resonance that happens, and that's all it takes for it to succeed, right? Finding that resonance is really something that is in the hands of the audience. So the power, real power, sits there. As a producer, we have to do our jobs well. One of the things that Emmay Entertainment, as producers, we've become more and more good at is making sure that we are serving the cause of the film and not ourselves. Because if a film is successful, then we are successful as producers. So it's very important to make sure that the right priorities are set in place for the team. And this is one of those.
Okay. There was a debate, a rather huge debate a few years ago on this star kids versus, struggling real talent that was going on. So I wanted to know your view, Emmay, as a producer. Like, what do producers look at? Maybe they want to go with safer star kids option because maybe there's a people assume that it's safe to go if it's a star kid, or rather producers are actually looking at real talent, and maybe it's also a little cost effective on the budget part. So how does the producer see this?
I think that's a really interesting question. The thing about star kids, and firstly, we have to understand what is celebritydom and what is being an actor, and we have to understand what is being a star. So to be a star, you have to be somebody who is successful and appreciated for the competency that you are putting out there. Being a celebrity is a competency in itself. Being an actor is a competency in itself. And if you're both, then that's fantastic. I think the fact that they come from families that are perhaps giving them accessibility is an advantage. Certainly an advantage, but that's the extent of the advantage. I'm somebody who enjoys a curiosity. So, I mean, I'd be lying if I told you I don't have a nice chuckle at seeing, Saif's kids being ferried on a football field. It's fun to see that, right? But that's where I think the fascination, like any consumer, is limited to. When we decide to watch a story, we get immersed in a character, and it's really a question of how well that character has been performed. Give you an example today. You don't remember the fact that Hrithik Roshan is the son of a wonderfully celebrated filmmaker and actor himself, which is Rakesh Roshan. You remember Hrithik Roshan. That's because his competency has taken him to that distance, right? And then unfortunately, there are some who haven't been able to break the mold because of the comparison that is often made to their family member. Let's say family member, because sometimes it could be an uncle, it could be an aunt, it could be anything, right? I just believe that everybody comes with their own destiny, firstly, and it's what they make with it. And I've seen people who've come with all that accessibility not being able to succeed. As far as Emmay Entertainment is concerned, yeah, you're right. I mean, our budget sometimes has forced us to look in the direction of casting people who can afford to cast. But we're very careful that the pressure of commerce does not compromise the need for competency. So we have always focused on getting acting chops into our frames more than celebritydom. And it really is delightful when we see that those calls that we've made has made celebrities out of those wonderful choices. I'm talking about when we cast people like Jim Sarb and Ishwak in Rocket Boys. And people turned around and immediately after seeing them perform, they said, wow, who are these guys? Or the people, the cast that we've put in Freedom at Midnight. When people watch Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway and they say that, hey, Rani's terrific, but who's the guy who played her husband? He's amazing. And they discover he's a well-known actor from Bengali films. So for me, I think casting should be determined by the competency that you need and the commerce that you can afford. Let celebritydom come, follow later.
Okay. So
you have a chance then. That's what it means when you can audition for us.
When can I come for an audition?
See, I knew it. You're changing the whole direction of this conversation now. Go on.
Okay. So, jokes apart, coming to struggling talent, when we say, so if someone is planning two aspects, if someone is planning to pitch a project to Emmay Entertainment, how can they, approach, and what is that one thing that they need to make sure they have before coming here?
So I'll answer the last part first. What they need to make sure that they have is they need to make sure they have a unique vision, an authentic story, and a lot of patience. And I'll explain to you, the first two are easy to understand, but the patience part is because this is a process that you win when you're very patient, and it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're an experienced person or a newcomer, or like you said, a struggler. I think you have to appreciate that you have to be patient because there is only so much that the funnel can provide. And that's not just about our company, that's about the industry by itself. Having said that, at Emmay, we've streamlined the process because I think I personally come from an ethos where it takes a lot of courage to reach out to a stranger and ask them for help. And I think every person who reaches out to us, I can't say honestly that we've been able to successfully connect with them, but we try very hard in every point of contact that we have, wherever it is, that we try and make sure we acknowledge that outreach. That's one very important thing. The second thing is that where it comes to actual submissions, we've actually got a very streamlined process. There's a QR code that you can scan, which appears on our website, and then you can automatically go into where you can make that submission. There's a restriction on how many words we allow the submission to come in as a log line, so that this can be immediately a filter process for us, whether this is something, and it's also a test, because if you're really authentically, you have a unique vision and authenticity towards it, you'll be able to say it in fewer words and with great accuracy. And this becomes a filtration point for us to decide whether this, number one, is something of interest. Two, does it clash with anything that we're currently working on? And three, if it isn't either of the two, then we would go to the next step. And sometimes if it's not something that we're interested in, we would immediately respond by saying we aren't. The process from there takes a slightly more legal approach, and we have to. This is something that writers, creators, they feel they should overlook that because this is the way of getting into the door. I would advise them, please do not jump over the hoop. It's really important that you follow the legal process, and if you are dealing with a producer who doesn't have that, ask for it, because you have to protect yourself. You have to protect your idea just as much as a producer needs to protect themselves and say that, listen, this is not an idea that is suitable for us, or if it is, then there are various levels of the process where this may fall out. And be honest enough to say that, hey, this matches something I'm doing already. We need to stop the conversation here so that there isn't a conflict of interest. Either way, we have to understand that understanding the legals of this business doesn't make you less of an artist. You know, we sometimes think we can be very avant-garde and I'm not going to be contained by a contract. No, you can't. But you certainly can be somebody who tests out intention. And when somebody has a legal responsibility towards you and towards themselves, you automatically understand the intention with which they're doing the business, right? So this is one piece of advice I have for people who are reaching out, not just to us, to anybody else.
It's I must say it's not advice, it's a guidebook for them
Thank
to,
you.
I think they'll have a very clear idea after this of what to do.
Fantastic.
And is there something for maybe the other part of the crew that you're looking at in terms of, because filmmaking is a very niche space and a very less amount of students opt for because of parental pressures, which we will come to later in the part of conversation. But maybe is there a similar process for maybe actors and maybe directors, cinematographers?
Sure. So for actors, I think one of the things that at Emmay Entertainment we are very particular is that we let our directors choose their cast, but we ensure that this is done through a casting agent always, or casting director. The reason for this is because, again, we want to make this a very democratic process, and again, where we follow the path of whether it is auditioning talent. And I know it can be very onerous, because why is it that if I can reach you directly for submitting an idea, why do I have to go through 3 levels to reach you for potentially testing for a role? There are firstly a lot more aspirants who want to be actors. What are they suitable for is something that sometimes cannot be determined by us. It is important that we allow people who are experts to be able to counsel even people who come in and tell them that, listen, with the attributes you have, the showreel you've built up for yourself, you'd be suitable for a certain role in a certain way, and this is where we would like to see you getting your breaks. That's not a conversation that a producer needs to have, and rightfully should be done at the casting agent level. So I encourage people. I know it's tough because there are some casting agents who are very good and there are some who aren't that good. But I think today there's enough information in the public domain where aspirants can access that information and know who they can trust and who they should approach. Be very careful when you're doing that. And typically, if you go through the credits of movies that you've enjoyed, filmmaking that you appreciate, you'll see that there's a credit given to a casting director there. And if it is something that, a name that pops up even more frequently, then you know this is somebody who is actively going to look for new talent because they have that volume of work. So you've got to be a bit of a sleuth yourself to find your way through.
Okay. Now coming a little towards technology, AI is now big time everywhere. So how do you see AI in filmmaking, and how does Emmay Entertainment plan to use AI for its projects? Is there any such discussions in the company right now?
So AI, one of my partners, Madhu Bojwani, recently answered a question on this very beautifully. So I'm going to take the liberty of quoting her. And somebody said to her that, how can we allow AI? It's going to replace so much in our business. And she asked them if they had ever flown by an airplane. And everybody in the audience said, yeah, I mean, we know what it is to fly by an airplane. And she says, do you realize that 50 years ago, everybody didn't fly by an airplane? They took a train to reach where they had to, and it took longer. And then if you go 50 years before that, they took a car. And if you go 50 years before that, they took a horse. So progress. One of the things about progress is it brings about efficiency. And what efficiency does is it finds a way that it makes life even more interesting and gives us the opportunity to do a lot more. But I don't think that it necessarily takes away jobs. It forces you to reskill. It forces you to relook at and re-examine how society changes because of the changes of technology. So that's a very pragmatic view towards AI that I think we'd like to take as producers. In the workplace currently, we're experimenting with using AI in our processes. So ensuring that our audit processes are absorbing, AI tools that are there. We're looking at how we can use it in our financial and accounting processes. But here's the interesting thing. Now we're beginning to look at it in our post and in our packaging, and it's making an immense impact. But hang on, it's also making an impact in how we are pitching and prepping. So when we look at what's on the screen, it's a matter of time where it begins to influence how we create what we are creating. It's not something, again, that we should fear, because as we started this conversation, we talked about how content consumption is becoming really as important as sleep in a human being's life. It's very clear to us that the more content with greater accuracy is created, the better it is. AI, for example, is helping us make things multilingual faster than shooting a scene in 3-4 different languages, with the lip sync being accurate completely to the language that is being spoken. Again, these are things we could have never thought about. And imagine the impact it's going to have when something that you could have sent to would be consumed by only one set of audiences is now affordable or available to people who speak 20 different languages. So I think we have to appreciate that technology is really expanding the market. And at Emmay, we're pretty excited about it. We're nervously excited. There are times when I get upset because I've seen my own content, an article that I wrote, somebody wrote back to me and said, oh, we can give you a tone which sounds like New York Times. We can give you a tone that sounds like Washington Post. And I was like, can I just stay myself? So I think that vigilance has to be there also. And protecting artists, protecting creators, so that their voice doesn't get plagiarized and abused. I think it's important that we work in tandem with, again, legal to protect that.
Okay. Let's come to education. You love contributing into academics. I know that you conduct a lot of master classes, not just in India, but also abroad. So with your experience in academics, do you feel there is a difference in the type of students? Obviously, there is cultural one and in a lot of other matters, but the core component in a student's, the way they approach education, if we consider that one aspect, do you think there is a difference between students abroad and students in India? Or maybe we can, to niche it down, talk about filmmaking students abroad and filmmaking students in India.
Again, a very good question. In fact, I had a discussion around this with your principal itself. And, I explained to her why it's important that the application of the education is to be something that is introduced in the classrooms much earlier than later. I feel sometimes the limitations of our infrastructure and our logistics in India make it, and the size of our classrooms makes it difficult for us to achieve that. But we have to do it. We have to push the envelope, and that's the fundamental difference. Because when I deal with students who come from abroad, their sense of application of the education is so natural, so organic, that they're able to actually see where they're applying that, right? And so their questions and their participation in masterclasses and things like that becomes far more lateral in thinking. Having said that, what I think is great, and I love this about students in my own country, is there is such a hunger to improve. There is a clear understanding that we need to prove ourselves. There's something very, very inspiring when you're in a class where you hear this uniformly through everybody who speaks there, as versus being in a classroom where somebody says, well, we've achieved this, now what more can you give us? So I think that is the attitude which I see in my country, I see in my students in my country, and it inspires me every time I'm in a classroom with them.
Okay. So adding on further to education, unfortunately, Indian parents are very critical of creative careers, especially maybe filmmaking, not just filmmaking, a lot of other parts as well. So they want their children to go for safer options, something that has larger chances of, employability and a stable life. So would you like to address them and say something as a producer?
Firstly, there's no such thing as stability in a job, in any career. I think we are in a higher and fire culture and time in history. We're also in a place where the world is moving more and more towards being a gig economy. And guess where the term gig economy comes from? It comes from the gigs that came from the entertainment industry. So I think people who are in the entertainment industry are far more prepared to embrace the world in the future than the world is in the future. So the irony of that is never lost on me. And I try to remind a lot of people. But I think that's changed compared to if I look back to 30 years ago when Nikhil, my brother and my business partner, who decided to want to be a filmmaker, and how initially shattered our father was at the idea, because he said, no, my son must study science and he must, pursue the sciences and get a PhD in the US and a green card. Of course, in my family, I dropped out of university, not to pursue films as a career, but And this is not to demean the value of education. Education is very critical, it's very important, and it's a great catalyst to greater things. But I think that in the context of, where giving credence to a career in media and entertainment, I think it took some time, and we've come a long way, and it's a matter of pride today when I walk in and sometimes meet people who are bankers, and they turn around and tell me that guess what, our son's going to become a musician, or I've got a family member who's an actor, or a family member who is becoming an editor. And they actually speak about it with great passion and knowledge. So I think we've come a long way. And my only message to parents is that it is so important that you let your children do things that make them happy. Because what really keeps me coming back to work every day is the fact that this is a place and I do something that makes me happy. And I think that's what you should, that's what good parenting is all about.
Okay. So do you think we are doing enough to educate and create more media professionals in India, or is there something more?
There's a gap, definitely a gap. And I think the government in its the finance minister in the last bill mentioned how content creation with AI as prompt editors also is going to become part of the curriculum. I think that's a great initiative by itself to ensure that there's a readiness. I remember a time when learning Word was Microsoft Word was part of our curriculum in school, and it was like, wow, that's something fascinating. But I think the fact that AI prompt editors or as a career path is becoming more and more important tells you about the awareness that you can't, media and entertainment, I believe, will become a horizontal rather than a vertical in our lives. Somewhere we all are telling a story every day, whether it is posting an Instagram post or shooting a reel or taking a selfie. So yeah, you can't escape it.
Okay. Coming to the entrepreneurial side of you, you have been an angel investor in a lot of companies for a very long time now. So is it are your pointers on based on which you select maybe stories or filmmakers similar to what you do in terms of entrepreneurship and startups? Like you
In a
mentioned
way
discipline.
it is. No, but in a way it is. You're right. Because an entrepreneur has a good story. And it's a story which they don't know the ending of, but they're really good at starting it. And you know that maybe with your support, they'll actually find, maybe not the ending, but they'll actually find a way to make that story come to life. So it's quite similar in many ways. I've always invested in people. When I'm glad you touched on being an angel investor, and I don't invest so much in just media and entertainment sector companies. I invest in companies that are in across sectors. But one of the things I look for when I'm looking at cutting that first check is the person, is the individual. It's what are they like? What are they? How inspirational are they? How determined are they? How keen are they to show up to work every day, right? And I think that is something that you look for even in somebody who comes and tells you a story, because if they really, and I say this to a lot of them, because sometimes people come and say, you tell us what you want and we'll tell you a story, or they'll say, I have 10 stories, can I pitch them all? And I always say, tell me that one story that you think nobody can make, but is the one story you wish you could. And if you don't have that today, go back home, think about it, and come back, because this is your one chance. Because it's very important that you realize that when you have an opportunity to pitch, treat it as the last one in your life.
Okay. If you have to select one, producing films, maybe I know the answer. Producing films, academics, entrepreneurship. Just one. Or you can come up with your fourth option.
No, very kind of you, but no, I think there's a teacher in me. I always knew that. I resisted it, thinking to myself that I needed to first make money to live. But along the way, I have always found a way to teach because I always like to learn. I'm a lousy student. No, so let me correct that. I was a really good student academically. I got good grades, but I was always asking questions that I found teachers didn't have the answers to. So I used to get frustrated in class. And so I made it my business to learn. And I kept learning. And it's the biggest, I think it's one of those biggest joys that I have in my life, that I keep learning. It's become so second nature to me, so unconscious, that I don't even know when I'm gathering the data. But the best part is not that, when you are able to share that on words. So I love the idea of becoming a teacher eventually, more formally, because I think I get to learn as well.
So do you have a retirement plan in place, if I may ask?
I've been wanting to retire since I was 39, and now I'm going to be 56. So every day I write a retirement plan, and every day it gets undone by the people I come back to work with. But I don't think I'm a traditionalist in that context. I don't think I will traditionally retire, but I do believe that somebody once recently told me that I'm going to land up making cheese on the mountain. That's because I sometimes talk about doing things like that. But I can also tell you that I will keep teaching. If that's the last thing I do, I'll keep wanting to talk to people as long as they're there to listen to me, and I'll keep learning from them.
Okay. You shifted from corporate to starting up your own business with your partners. So, single-handedly as a women entrepreneur, was time, difficult for you? And how do you see, like back in early 2000s and cut to 2026, is life better for women entrepreneurs now, or is it, largely the same?
I'll tell you a funny thing. There was a very prolific person who came to interview my brother, even though we're three equal partners in this company, and came to interview my brother as the face and the leader of Emmay Entertainment. Completely excluded Madhu and me. And I'll tell you the irony. That reporter works for a company that Madhu and I are investors in, and I'm on the board of. So how is that for explaining that it doesn't get easier for women entrepreneurs? Because sometimes, no matter how hard we work, the spotlight misses us, sometimes deliberately. Having said that, does it make us cynical? You can. You have the choice to be cynical. What is the choice that Madhu and I made? Never to be cynical, and to just keep pushing forward. Because when we stand today, after having worked almost 40 years of our life, and we look behind, what we see is the number of women entrepreneurs and leaders and executives we have managed to inspire. And they may not be in the context of a planet of 8 billion. I'm just glad that among the 4 billion women, there are a bunch of them that we've inspired to push through. And we'll keep doing that. And we hope they will keep doing that. And that is how the change will come about. So it's about showing up. It's about showing up every day. And it's about showing up for each other.
So you mentioned about your partners. So has you and Nikhil sir being siblings helped you all, or is it the other way around?
Honestly, it's made me a better sister. Nikhil and I have just 11 months apart from, he's 11 months younger than me. And I think in like we have a younger brother as well. And then Madhu's also like a sibling who grew up with us. In many ways, Nikhil and I were always competing with each other as siblings. And we are fiercely protective of each other, fiercely. But we are also even more fiercely competitive with each other. What I think working with him has done for me is it's made me deeply appreciative of the immense talent he has and this incredible intellect that he possesses. It's so fascinating that I would go so far as to saying he's one of the most difficult people to deal with, but one of the most intelligent people I have had the wonderful fortune of knowing, and I call my brother. Not a day goes by where I don't get more angry with him, but not a day goes by that I'm any less proud of him. He is just incredible. So I genuinely think that my relationship with him as a sister has improved working with him. with Madhu. She's my best friend. We again grew up together. And for me, she gets very upset when I tell her that, I'm so proud of who you've become. She says, you make it sound as if, I'm a kid. But, in my heart, she is somebody who I've always seen hesitant to take what she truly deserves. And today, when she's the Producer Guild Vice President, taking such fantastic and bold steps in representing not just our company, but our industry, in the kind of advocacy she's doing, the kind of investment she makes in technology, it is really something I admire. And I don't say it to them to their face, but I don't think I'd go back into life and say I'd keep choosing them as my business partners to collaborate with.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very old advice that people, at least I've heard.
Don't work with your friend and don't work with
your family members, but you've done both. So with that being said, if I may ask, how do you all handle disagreements?
There's a volume control that doesn't exist. So it's broken. So I think the most important thing is when you have learned to resolve problems in a sandpit, you learn how to resolve it in the boardroom. And the three of us have found ways of beating each other up as children and fighting for who gets the last piece of the mango. And then when they win it, we turn around and say, now you can also have it, right? So I think the value system that three of us grew up with is the same, which is fight for it, but then learn how to share it. And I think sometimes the most simple lessons of life help most complicated situations in life. So that's how I'd explain the formula for us to resolve it. The last thing is all three of us have one thing in common: food. So you'll see us screaming at each other, throwing things at each other sometimes. And then the next minute we'll say, I've just called for ice cream from Swiggy, so it'll come. And then we'll just be eating ice cream and as if life has just gone on. So it's as simple as that.
Okay. So we have a small rapid fire round as a part of our show.
Go for it.
Okay. So one word that defines your journey so far.
Consistent.
A movie you wish Emmay had produced.
It's a show actually, Adolescence. I loved it. I wish we had made it.
So is there a moment in your life that you consider truly life-changing? Was there something?
I think when I lost my mom, because you keep thinking about death and the impact it'll have till it does, and strangely it makes you stronger. It's really strange. But even in all the sadness and the grief, you just find something inside you saying, wow, you're still alive and you're doing this. So you really had nothing to fear. It's like swimming. When you keep looking at the water and the ocean in front of you and you say that, I'm never going to be able to do this. And then you jump into it and you find a way to swim in it. And you say to yourself, damn, I have a life skill that I didn't know about. And it's the same thing. And so that's life-changing because it makes you feel a little stronger and a lot more invincible.
Okay. Books or scripts, what is there on your table right now?
I still am trying to go through a book which I should spend a little more time on, which is The Man Who Pays the Rent by Judi Dench.
Interesting. So, one Bollywood actor or actress you'd want to work with?
We've had the pleasure of working with Huma, but I'd love to work with her again.
Okay.
She's a good friend also, but I think she's somebody who just is relentlessly improving with every single day.
Okay. One quality you admire in a leader the most?
The ability to listen.
Okay. Is there anyone who you can call as your mentor or maybe someone who's inspired you a lot?
My mom. She's no more, but she continues to inspire me because it's incredible how much you remember when somebody leaves your life. But she was a great professional. Besides being a great mom, she worked hard at building her own ad agency. I remember before that she used to be a careerist who in the 70s, I used to admire her wearing her sari, wearing those block heels. As a child, I'd watch her putting her lipstick and just walking out there and going in the heat door to door to sell greeting cards. And my fondest memory is on the first Saturday of every month when she'd get her paycheck, she would take me to work and I'd sit in the reception waiting for her to finish and get half day. And then we would walk from the start from one point of Colaba Causeway to the other point, looking at shops and say to ourselves, one day we'll have money to buy what all the shops have. Um, and some of those moments are so precious. They really made me the person I am, and the person who keeps striving for more.
One habit of yours which you would want to stop?
Oh, wow. Eating sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a secret addiction. I pretend I don't have it.
So you mean raw sugar or like
No,
sweets?
yeah, sweets.
Okay.
I get into a lot of trouble in this office because of that. And then people bribe me also with it because they know that my two partners are constantly on the watch out for me not to have it. Yeah, don't have sugar, guys. Don't have sugar. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay. How much time do you spend on maybe Instagram or social media as a whole in a day?
Guilty. A lot. So I try to, and then I just said, I'm the FICCI average. The Ernst & Young and FICCI report says that we spend 7 hours a day. So I'm not going to say I spend anything less than that. I keep going back and forth between different apps through the day. I think it's a mental buster, but I spend more time on games. And I don't mean games, gaming. I love crossword puzzles. It's an addiction. And New York Times Games has now, earlier they had just 2 crosswords a day. Now they have 3. So that's my guilty pleasure. I love solving crosswords.
Okay. Coming to the last question, what is that one advice you would like to give all the students who are watching us today?
Show up, be patient, be authentic.
It was a lovely conversation, Emmay. Thank you so much for having us at your office again and giving us the time.
Thank
I
you.
know you've just, squeaked us between meetings, and thank you so much to you and your entire team.
It's an absolute pleasure. I just want to say this, that I've had the pleasure of visiting your campus. I've had the pleasure of seeing some of you perform as well. Really was amazed at the effort, at the quality. And I think you've got fantastic teachers. Your principal is inspiring. She's so determined to keep learning herself. Keep up the good work and keep inspiring the classes that come in after you. And let's keep building a better industry together.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Perspectives by DGMC. We hope today's conversation left you inspired and informed. A big thank you to you, ma'am, for sharing such beautiful insights with us, and to you, our dear listeners, for tuning in. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember that every perspective has the power to shape your journey. This is Sanman Udgikar signing off for today. Stay curious, stay connected. Thank you.